Another year has passed by for Vanguard in general, and it is safe to say Vanguard has been, I wouldn't call a peak relevancy like back in G, but I do have to say we have been eating really well for a past year or so. Of course, there are certain things that some people might not be happy about that will be discussed in another video, or at least that video should have been out by now. But overall, I do think DZBT06 does have a weakest impact out of the 6 booster. But for the first timer here, welcome to the channel. I normally cover my experience of a brand new deck or a new major support in a video, and I also do this kind of tier list. So if that's your thing, do consider clap that sub and become a member for some cool perks as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna get that plug out early, and if you are not a sub yet, well, I hope this video will make you sub to this channel. Especially I'm very close to 1005 sub at the time of the recording. As usual, I'm gonna be following a few rules. First off, no collab nation decks. This just to make sure that my life is a little bit easier, and in all fairness, I wasn't able to encounter that many people to really have a strong understanding of it. I'm fully aware some people has been wanting me to do the collab nation for a really long time already, but after considering everything, I unfortunately doesn't have enough time to actually work on that tier list. Maybe give me 500 likes in this video and I will consider to do it actually. Secondly, there will be a limited entry in the higher tier, particularly S tier and A plus tier. These are what I would call actual meta deck that you're gonna be seeing in competition in some form or another. And last but not least, of course, this is based purely on my experience, and I have to make a confession here. I have been quite busy with life, so I couldn't really have time to go and experience the DZBT06 meta at the moment, but I will make sure to refer to some of the more recent data if there is any significant entry that worth mentioning. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Since unfortunately we are not able to redo everything at once this time round, I'm gonna do entries by nation this time, just to have a little bit more flavor for you guys to experience in a different way. And we are gonna be starting off with the nation that I seem to have quite a negative affinity with, Dragon Empire. So we do have quite a few entries to go through for Dragon Empire, and we have to start off with a trauma from the past for everybody, Gandiva. And as we all know, Gandiva did get a mask, and in all fairness, his playstyle does transform quite a bit because of the mask engine. But overall, I do feel that mask engine doesn't really intrude him as much as his peer Solon, and I do feel Gandiva mask does bring back some speed with a little bit more draw power to make up for the sacrifice that you have to make for cards like Base Harvest, Urguen, or anything that you normally use to speed up your bind in Gandiva. The only thing about those boosts is that I feel it brings just enough for Gandiva to become an occasional rogue tier deck, but it wouldn't bring back the full glory of Gandiva, and that kind of purely boils down to the fact that the game has changed a lot since then, as not only there are a lot more decks that is able to handle Diva's number even at a later turn, but also a lot of decks is able to push Diva a much better aggro. Because of all these elements together, I'm still willing to raise Gandiva into something like mid-A tier, like maybe just behind Dragenesis, as I do feel the boost works. It's just that it came a little bit too late for Gandiva. Next up is a deck that is unfortunately is in the lower tier for a while, and that is Codiblaze. Codiblaze's main issue last time was the fact that it does need a lot of soul generation, and a lot of strong card that does help with the deck does require Soul Blast, and Blessing Warcry wasn't able to improve Codiblaze aggro enough. Fortunately, DZBT06 is a great time for Codiblaze because he get not only a brand new double R that fixes his soul and also his column number, but also new effect fronts, which does help you to fill up the soul, allowing you to be a little bit more comfortable to Soul Blast for cards for the brand new double R Nahid or even Latifa. So this deck now filters like no tomorrow, and on top of that, we just got the PR Incinerate Dragon, which actually give him even more filter, more power, and draw as well. So this card is, in my opinion, a really good card. The only issue with Codiblaze is still more or less the same issue that he always has been, and that is the fact that he do need time to set up, and if he couldn't set up properly at the appropriate timing, he do lose a lot of aggro. And because of that, I'm gonna put Cotiblaze from mid C into high B, just above Lyle Mota, top of B tier. After the rise that is Cotiblaze, I have to bring a damper down just a little bit because I feel the rest of the entry I'll be talking generally are kinda sad as we starting off with Vermilion.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
The blood, as I have covered in my video, does nothing aside from a slightly more optimized version of the original Vermilion with a more consistent buff and a bit more pressure thanks to the crit to Vanguard. And in all fairness, Kashin is not a bad support. It does help you to enable the support, but the problem with the deck is the fact that not only there is actually nothing new introduced into the deck, but also for some reason the support is also being nerfed a little bit by Bushiroad, particularly Kashin, who is for some reason were forced to be only able to call from hand to trigger the skill. Yes, I do aware that velocity exists, but the thing is that I don't see the reason for them to limit Kashin's skill when they actually remove that limiter for the deck that get almost the exact same support Maelstrom. So it's a little bit weird, and because of all this underwhelming support, Vermilion has no change. He still have some good point, but the fact that he stagnate even though he get a brand new form is definitely a sad fate of the blood. And then we have a deck that I do want to bring down a little bit because ever since then things changed a little bit and I have a bit different opinion about this deck, and that is Waga. He's still one of the best deck in the format. It's just that I feel overall he does perform worse by the other 3 and 3 that is just right beside him, and that is Love, Resile, and Live Rust. There's nothing too crazy to talk about it. I already talked about him in my previous tier list video. This is just to adjust him from the S tier down to the top of A plus tier. Do not worry, I will shift Love later. And then we have Coro. Okay, editing Mac here, and I'll just get to the point here. I forgot to talk about Tamaya in this recording completely. So I'm just gonna talk about it very quickly, as in all fairness, she has no change. The new order is actually a very strong filter, and I think the best out of the 3 glitter order that does filter. And on top of that, this card does have some recursion, but it has reached to the point where Tamaya is just having way too many toolbox to fit in. And yes, you can technically run this with some space manipulation, but it might lose some consistency. And to be fair, the order did nothing for the deck offense. So yeah, no change feels the most fair for me. And then we have Coro, the Gram. And because I did not cover the original Triumph Gram in the previous tier list, I'm gonna cover it this time around as well, because let's be real, both deck does get benefit from running the Coro support, as the Gram, the Coro version, is generally quite a fun deck. Even with the gimmick being very too unpredictable to play, I still think it is a very fun and solid deck. The only issue I just feel is that its playstyle is a little bit too vanilla for my taste. Like, consistent fire attack is not a bad thing. It's just that we see this same situation with many decks before, and he doesn't really bring anything new aside from his gimmick, which, like I said earlier, is unpredictable. So because of that, I'm gonna put him in B tier above Christianos. The deck has enough pieces that I feel that it works, and in all fairness, Gram does have access to easily one of the best searcher in the Dragon Empire as a nation, and that is Damage. So I feel it does have some uses. It's just that it's too vanilla to make a splash in the meta, which is an opposite to the way Triumph Gram is designed.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Yes, the card is even a bit more plain than Coro Gram, which does have a dangerous skill, but I do feel Triumph Gram does feel his mechanic is flexible enough to play around, especially considering the fact that he can superior call 1 grade 3 back every single turn. It's just that if you call back the original Triumph Dragon, you get a triple drive. But compared to the Coro Gram, Triumph Gram does lack a lot of pieces that help him to set up properly, especially with the fact that you are forced to run the original Triumph Dragon in the same deck. So I feel if they want to make this version of the deck works, they have to give us a support that play around this mechanic as well. But yeah, GG for a first time introduction to this tier list. I think you do good, you do well. And then we move on from the Fire Nation to Darkness. Okay, that's a little bit cringe. But yes, we are going into dark states and we do have quite a number of entry to talk about in this list as well. Starting off with, of course, Fafnir. I'll say this beforehand first. DZBT06 is not a good time for dark state in general. We do get some incredible generic cards like have a good year, but at the same time, we do have a lot of piss poorly designed, or at least slightly underwhelmingly designed dark state foils, except for a few that is. But what we did get does have some benefit for Fafnir, especially the order that I mentioned earlier, as this is a great order that allows you to set up early for Fafnir while also giving the deck access to the order pile, which is something that I feel help the Fafnir in the long run, as a bit of filter and draw will help the deck in a major way. And in all fairness, Dragenesis is definitely one of the better cards from the set, as it does help to fix some of the issue that the original do have in the past, meanwhile still play around the main mechanic of Fafnir, and that is you gain benefit from not riding, which is still a dumb gimmick, but you know what, they managed to cook. But it's still clunky because of the very hefty cost, even if Dragenesis has an alternate cost. But from what I noticed is that we don't have that many use cases for the skill, so I do feel Fafnir is not gaining enough momentum compared to other Overlord playstyle decks like Emma or Overlord, who did also get Velocity Dragon. So because of that, I'm willing to bring Fafnir up from the pit of D tier to mid B. Like, that is how much the support has improved, but it is by no means incredible. Next up, we have
Know your fucking place, trash.
And then we have Chaos.
Know your fucking place, trash.
Now you get why DZBT06 is not a good time for dark state in terms of foil. Well, let's move on to another not underwhelming but okay addition to the deck, and that is Jett. So I'll say this outright first, Jett will not get any rank adjustment from me because he's already high up, and if he want to be much higher than this, he needs something that will make him much stronger, because right now the brand new strike and the new support doesn't really bring much to the table aside from Uga Buga I draw more and hit a little bit harder.
Brother,
Okay, yeah, that's what I see in my notes.
What the fuck, hussy?
But regardless, I do think it's a decent addition. Like, Chronos Command give you a good control, Glimmer Brace does give you a decent draw and a beast stick, but I feel what Jett already has with things like Goat, Philia, Fossil Law, Fort Revoltis is good enough to keep Jett more or less unbeatable. So because of that, no chance for Jett. And then we have one more we have to be a bit downer about. We have Bruce, the red one, is getting a harsh drop from A- tier to D tier.
What? What the fuck?
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't played this Bruce enough, and I only found it out recently because, you know, we get a new PR, so I decided to try it out, and I have woken up to the fact that this version of Bruce is way too bricky for any insane support for Bruce to work for him, and that kind of simply just boils down to the fact that Violet Bruce and to an extension Unrivaled Bruce are not exactly a good boss unit to begin with. Like I have said before, in the earlier time where Bruce was actually meta. Yeah, the fact that almost everything is locked behind turn 4 is simply a pure badly aged card design. And not only that, the costs start to come up and bite back this version of Bruce, because I feel like I couldn't really utilize the capability of the Diabolos rearguard when the Vanguard is consistently trying to get rid of one of the main resource of this deck, and that is Soul. And the only way that I feel the Kuwait Bruce can actually become relevant again is for them to design a card specifically designed for the red Bruce that either enable final rush for the deck earlier and maybe give access to a bit of final burst for the deck as well, because Vibrant Bruce is just a much better version of Bruce right now, because every time he gets a brand new support ever since the start of the Wines, his playstyle get better and better. And Hines, which is a brand new PR for Bruce, is an incredible card as it does does give us a beta and a CC, which at a glance seem to be good to play for both decks, and it does, but I feel Vehemence does integrate Hines into his playstyle much better, thanks to the fact that he still retains his Persona right, and at the same time he is also capable of utilizing this 18k better than Kool-Aid Bruce, thanks to the fact that Vehemence has a synergy with All-In. But the deck do still need to get all the pieces together.
You were so close to perfect.
So I couldn't really bring Vehemence up all the way into a meta tier deck, but I'm still willing to bring him up from a -A tier into a mid-A tier. That is just how much he has improved. And then we have the Coro support, and that is Rewinder. So I'm gonna be talking about both versions of the Rewinder, the one from the Coro and the one that is also an Oscillage card. So for Rewinder is a very incredible deck. It is self-contained, but it does have a very good compression, soul building, and also in general a very simple but effective combo. And it's so self-contained that regardless of which version you decided to play, and by this I mean Dusted version or Coro version, it is good, as it depends on what you want to prioritize. Coro for more compression thanks to the Coro order, and Dusted for a much bigger payoff thanks to the Dusted playstyle of soul building. And the only problem I'm seeing it being a problem occasionally is the fact that you do have to take some time to set up with Tri-Eye because of it is being a grade 3 set order. So for the normal Rewinder, you truly only have one turn to go full burst, and that's it. Because of that, A- tier. It has a very strong foundation, but it does need a little bit more push in the right direction
for the deck to go next level.
And then we have Chrono J or Rewinder J or whatever you want to call it. And I'm gonna decide, and I feel this is also a very solid deck, but which one I think is better, because I do think this is a A- tier worthy, and I'm gonna put it above Rewinder. Yes, Chrono J just edges out both Rewinder just a little bit, purely because it had the best of both worlds. The access from the Rewinder engine that technically is playable with this version of Rewinder, and also Oscillage support, which generally are equally strong and does have its own benefit and demerit. With Oscillage has a more focus on drawing thanks to Hilligan and his PR, and Rewinder
has better rush.
But it does have one interesting weakness, and that is the fact that it also inherits the weakness of both Rewinder and Oscillage, depend on which side of the scale you are willing to tip. Overall, I do think Chrono J is definitely a diamond in the rough, but it's a shame because I don't think that vision will come into fruition anytime soon, or at least for a really long while. With how, let's admit it, with how kind of piss poor Bushiroad has been treating the start decks.
Why are you like this?
Bushiroad, like Chris said in his video, you don't have to do this to get profit. There is better ways for all parties to win. But before we move on to Brandgate, I do want to talk about one particular deck. A deck that unfortunately I forgot to mention earlier, and I feel I had to talk about this because it did allow this person to get into the finals in Season 4. Jaiva was able to come in second in the WGP Season 4 in Singapore, and on top of that, he managed to get into the Final 8 for the finals in the same country. So I have nothing else to say but congrats, man. You earned that medal. In my humble opinion, the dark horse of this year deluxe in Singapore. Some of you might be wondering why exactly it is that. Well, I'm here to talk about it, and here is a reason why. For one, Sthia exists.
That's it?
Sthia Arena is an incredible card for Jaiva in general, and if you are able to build up to the 5 material Jaiva, you literally can hard counter Levidrus, and to a smaller extent also hard counter decks that require board on the field like Love and Raziel to an extent. So the point is that Jaiva playstyle is able to have an edge over some of the base deck in the format right now, but is it strong enough for me to actually bring him up into a meta tier? I don't think so. Emotional, damn it! The reason behind this is that Jaiva still have fair share of the problems that still haven't been fixed properly yet, and that is the fact that without Stra Varena, Jaiva is nothing, and without crossover dress, Jaiva is nothing as well. So until this heavy flaws is fixed properly, I don't think Jaiva deserves a rise in ranking, but he is definitely a strong rogue tier deck to be played in DZBT06. And now let's move up to the north, not for Christmas but for Vanguard, as we have quite a few entries to talk about, one of which is one of the deck entry I want to reiterate because now I understand how to play this deck, and that is Elite Glamour. I'll say this now, I do still feel the point I mentioned in my previous tier list still 100% stand, but since then there are two things that I come to realization after looking through the cards properly or test with the proper version of the deck, and that is the fact that the new grade 1 can actually set more than 3 set order at a time, and Savoid is actually playable in this deck.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
These two facts that I come to learn afterwards change everything for the deck, because this means that even if your hand is full of bricks of set order, as long as you have 3 different set order in your hand, you can just use this grade 1 to just set everything down right in front, allowing you to actually have a bigger burst of the set order set effect within one single instant. And also Savoid is a really good card to run in this deck because it helps you to recycle this new grade 1 monster as well as the main beater for Elite Glamour. Essentially, this deck is more about prepare everything and just blast in one single shot. Now I understand why they have to make the set order searching ability a bit more RNG reliant. And on top of that, in this booster the deck did get this ice fishing, which does raise a little bit of consistency and also another option for Elite Glamour to run that set order, even if it might compromises the Jumbotron Energy Blast 3 skill, but regardless it is still a buff for Elite Glamour. However, like I said earlier, all my points from previous video still apply to Elite Glamour. It's just that now that I understand how some of the possible interaction works, it is not a D tier deck anymore. It is definitely a high B tier deck. I do not think it's the strongest deck in the format, but it is a very strong out of nowhere rogue tier deck. And then moving on from monsters, we have to talk about the god, the Genesis Dragon, that is, as we are talking about Messiah.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
And I already talked about it recently in one of my videos. Transcell Messiah is a decent update to the Messiah as a whole, as it allowed the deck to have a little bit more focus on controlling, which is something that they already do a little bit every single turn already, which does counter many decks that do have their board open like Love, which is one of the strongest deck in the format right now. But I feel the most important part of this update is Lady Dwarf, as it's a locker that can self-revive. This means that you can actually reduce the load on the PR order and also other compressor, because now you have a way to just build back the board without the need of having this thing in your hand, especially the PR order, since sometimes you want to use it for its second skill. And of course, Deadly Ice Fishing is a great set order to run in this deck as well for the earlier game and the soul building. But here comes a slight problem. He is already in high A. Do I willing to put in an A+ tier? No. There is only one deck that has reached that status in DZBT06. I'll come back to that later on, but for now, let's move on from the god to the sus.
Stop it. Get some help.
And that's Silhouette. Okay, unfortunately for Silhouette, I don't think the ranking changed for him. The reason behind this is because the brand new support is not a terrible support, because now the deck has more ways to soul blast for all the soul that you build using drill arms, and you also can run less of the set order because you can just do discard to just recycle everything back. But the thing is that I feel what Silhouette need more now is just a better way to boost the arms unit. I know the PR does help it to a great extent, but I feel you need more than that, and I feel it wouldn't hurt the deck to get an arms that can actually search for other arms. If they are scared of making it too easy to search, then how about making the cost to search for this new hypothetical arms that I'm talking about to be something along the line of remove itself from the field. That way, you don't have to worry about the deck being broken, unless there's something cooking in the used Quake that I'm not aware of yet for the main character, because I feel right now Silhouette is easily the weakest Youthquake deck right now, and that's why no change for Silhouette. And the same can be said for Eva. Yes, Eva did get a brand new research, and I do feel that order is actually not a bad order at all, because it allows you to increase the recursion of the deck, since it allows you to send back the glitter card, which also means that it allows you to write Poison in Paradise with Immigra effect every single turn if you happen to draw Immigra during your drive checks or your normal draw.
Genuinely disgusting.
But it does come at a cost, because now that you are running a little bit more set order in your deck, you do have trouble setting it up, and at the same time you also brick slightly defensively because of the fact that you're running more bricks. Fortunately enough, the deck do run Friction Wave now in most of the Eva build I have seen, which is a great defensive card for Eva. So because of how good this research order is, it is strong enough for Eva to retain the ranking as one of the meta trade for her. It's just kind of sad because unfortunately, even if her plus outweigh the minus, the top deck still counter her. But what I don't want to be retired though is Dayusha. Mecha bias aside, I do think the brand new support for Dayusha is alright. Like, the brand new D-Robo is great for board extension and also increase the number of D-Robo in your deck. Otherwise, I feel it is super unnecessary.
Why?
Like, the deck already self-call from Soul already, why are you giving another card to do so? Unless you are going second. So yeah, I don't think that card is incredible, it's just serviceable and a prime target for a better D-Robo if we are getting it later on. And then we have Glory Maker. This is good because it makes Dayusha going second even more scarier, because it can activate the guard restrict very early on. And for every time you Persona right, this guard restrict will come and irritate you to no end all the time, especially if you are a deck that do run Blitz order. And to top it off, Glory Maker costs no resource except for herself. So because of that, Dayusha received no change to his ranking as well, which is in high A. Moving on to the last two decks to talk about, we have the deck that did get a PR, Proto Visor. Let's admit here, this PR is incredible. It helped you to set up the arena one turn earlier if you fulfill the condition, and it helped you to search for arena cards in general, making the deck compress just a little bit better. The problem with this card though is the fact that Bushiroad learned their lesson from Hero thanks to Amasdania, and they applied all the possible restrictions to this particular PR to an extent I feel is not funny. Like, Arena Search require a counter blast, the deck can counter charge technically infinitely, but on hit is still on hit. And then we have the fact that you have to go second to use the second part of the search skill, where you can set one arena for free. That is a little bit retarded in my opinion, because the deck, even if you remove that restriction, the deck is still problematic because it relies on way too many rare card placement to be good, as you do need at least 3 rare card to get a full effect of Proto Visor. And even if there is a card that will hide everything for Proto Visor, the fact that Bushiroad doesn't release any more Proto Visor, making the deck capability to build a board still a bit questionable. Like, the PR is not even Proto Visor when it could have been one, because that would fix the deck so much. So I feel like the best I can bring Proto Visor up is high B, because the PR actually works. It does make Proto Visor going second actually scary. But if Proto up against a deck that can control, and there are a good number of them in the top tier right now, the deck will just explode like how Gandiva explode in the games. Like, seriously, stop being a devil to the mecha archetypes in Vanguard, man, Bushiroad, because you only need one devil, and that is black. And yes, we are gonna move into Coro Black, which is the last entry for Blanket. This is a very interesting deck because I'm not gonna lie, it has a bad first impression for me, because until they release everything for black, I thought it was bad. But now that we know all the cards in the deck has decent draw power, decent board building capability, because there are some cards that can resist the Grade 4 black deals, as well as able to self-call itself back from drop zone. And it is clear what black Coro main goal is. Have one turn that is really powerful in a single burst at the earlier part of the game, and by that I mean turn 3 if you're going second and turn 4 if you're going first. Very similar to Bastion in all fairness, but you only have one burst. What the fuck? Because after that, the deck can get slightly fragile because of the black's deal retiring everything on the board. So if you do not have those rare cards that can resist the retire, you lose quite a lot. But it is safe to say, black is also another deck that I would say that is good in both versions of the deck, depending on which nation you decided to go for. As for blanket wise, you do have a slightly better resource or search thanks to the fact that you have cards like Boundary to search and build up the soul and everything. Meanwhile, Coro has a slightly better rush thanks to all the early game support that you can get that can fetch the Coro Dragon out early. So just like Rewinder, choose your poison and play with what you enjoy. But regardless, both versions I will still give it the same ranking, and that's low A.
Minus.
I think the deck has strong enough rush to close the game very quickly, but is really bad at recovering afterward. So low A
Minus.
feels right, at least for this deck. And let's keep the hope continue on as we are moving into Keter Sanctuary. And we have to start off with Tara the Android Pet. Oh, I mean Love and Berry, as I do want to readjust their ranking just a little bit. Particularly Love, as I have mentioned a few times in the earlier part of the tier list, where she is currently the Queen of Rush in current standard. And that's why I'm shifting her into Sthia in Waga's place. There's nothing much to talk about Love, but I do feel a lot of people will be wondering about Berry. Why suddenly she came out of nowhere in Japan finals? Well, to put it simply, Berry does surprisingly counter certain deck well, especially deck that has a good way to counter the rear guard like Levidras. Berry has enough of a draw and pressure to consistently push this deck all the time without relying on rear guard. The only issue I'm feeling with Berry is that whatever I said before still carries over, but it is not as harsh as I thought it was, but I still feel it's a rogue tier deck. So I'm not gonna change positioning for Berry because I feel like outside that few counters that the higher tier deck can get affected, I don't see it getting countered by anything else. And then we have the unfortunate other half of DBT10, and that's Soliron. I'm not gonna lie, I thought Mass Soliron was gonna be a good update for Soliron because, let's be real, additional drive check is always good, a guaranteed superior call is always good. The problem with that skill is that it requires Dragon Tree Marker to be on the board. This means that you do have to run a larger amount of mass engine, which kind of screw up the deck ratio quite a bit because Soliron engine is by no means small. This causes Soliron to have a strong space issue, and essentially you can only harp as some cards from the original Soliron and harp as Mars. So it is an unfortunate fate, and because of that I feel Soliron Mars just doesn't feel as worth to play compared to the original, even if he does have a quality of life skill that allow you to more or less trigger his skill every single time. So because of that, I'm just gonna leave him in high B because he did not really bring anything new to Soliron, but he did not screw it hard like what we have seen with Neutelinga Mars, which I still feel by far is the worst Mars unit. Unless they release cards that help Soliron to gel all the support together, then yeah, I might change my mind on this entry, but for now I'm leaving him in high B. Then we have Under the Water, I mean Undercover, and I will say this now, initially I thought the support was okay, but after playtesting it, I feel Genix, the brand new card, is a really great update to the deck because it fixed one very big issue with the deck that I forgot about it for a while until I started retesting the deck, and that is Soul issue. Because Obscure Soul Blast quite a lot with his own skill, Dietre also Soul Blast for her to get additional 10k, so a lot of soul is being used, not a lot of soul is being recovered, and Genix is there to fix that issue, and on top of that, give CC when you really need it. The only thing I feel that Undercover hasn't improved further is the fact that you're still having issue with Eva Syndrome because you still kind of want to run 4 copy of Monitor Trace in your deck. So if we can get a way or an Undercover in it that help you to cycle through Monitor Trace, that would help the deck a whole lot more. But for now, it is in a very good spot, and I feel if you are looking to play a Keter deck, this is one of the few decks where you don't really have to buy generics to actually play the deck. So highly recommend for those who play the budget deck, and because of that, Undercover get a rank up for me from low B to high B. That's how good the Genix is to go up the rank, but I don't think he has breaking through into any of the A tier yet.
You were so close to perfect.
Then we have, I think, what everyone has been looking forward to, Graham Grace. There's nothing much else to say lah. Zeke give the crit to the deck and that's all I can say. Crit to the center column of the deck is enough to improve the deck aggro. But I do still feel Graham Grace is still a turn 4 deck because of his reliance on Persona. But fortunately enough, the PR does fix his hand issue thanks to the fact that not only this card can self-call itself back from drop, but also it enables triple drive regardless of whether you are going first or second. So because of all these elements together, I'm willing to shift Graham Grace up from B to top A- tier. And before we go to the next entry, rest in peace Fern Bio, to have done well for the deck. Okay, enough of the dragon and dudes, let's move a little bit into some actual plot. As we have Degria. And there's nothing else much to talk about Degria. The support doesn't really do much for Degria, so for that, no change. The reason behind that is because, yes, the order does as it was intended. It helped to board build, allowing you to essentially ensure most of the piece is ready before turn 4, or at least help you to prep during your Dark Degria turn. The order also helps to cycle Epee, which means that you don't have to be too worried about you not getting Epee as fast as you need it to be.
Which is nice and all.
The problem here is I feel you still have to run Magenta if you're going first. And this is purely due to the grades of this brand new order being a grade 2. So because of that, you are running more breaks. So you break even harder. And I feel the only way to fix that issue for the deck, at least in my opinion, is for the deck to have a way to set the order directly. Like that would help the deck a lot because it would save you a few counter blasts, and at the same time it would allow you to benefit from cards like Magenta a little bit more. But I'm not a hardcore Tegria player, so I might be wrong in this case, but I just feel the order doesn't really do anything new for the deck, and that's why I'm leaving her in high B. And then we have the last deck for Kita Sanctuary, and that is Dekakun Coro edition. I'm not gonna lie, this is a really good deck. Like, for a newer player who want to learn about compression and consistency and tempo, I think this is a great deck to start off, as the deck has very great compression with all of the upper half of Dekakun can search for his lower half. Then you also have a tanking capability that the deck can achieve thanks to Dekakun being 18k, and funnily enough can actually resist a lot of targeted skill, including the one that targeted Vanguard. The best way I can explain that Dekakun is he's literally a tower, and he is literally feels like a tower monster in Yu-Gi-Oh! But as much as it helps you to teach the importance of compression and tempoing, it is a very one-note deck because it feels like a great deck to play in DBT 10 era, but in the current meta, I feel it's a little slow. But its consistency and it weirdly being really good at compression does land Dekakun into low A tier. That's how much I feel beginner friendly Dekakun is, and I feel like this will greatly benefit if we have different version of Dekakun for different scenario. So if we are getting second wave of Coro cards, that would be great actually, like genuinely. And then we move into essentially the last part of this tier list video, as technically we only have one really cool deck to talk about. But before that, let's touch some grass with Storkeia. And we are starting off with the most grassy unit that you can think of when it comes to Storkeia, Rorowa. And if you guys notice, there is another Rorowa icon in the tier list. Yes, I'm gonna be treating Rorowa, Crossing Rorowa, the new one, as a different entry. The reason behind this is because I still feel the original Rorowa still is a pretty much very playable, but does have a slightly different style of playing around, even if the end goal of both decks are very similar. As Crossing Rorowa, I feel is a more resource focused version of the original Rorowa, where the original has a more focus on clapping at your opponent as hard as possible. So for some people, this might not be a good thing because I feel like Crossing Rorowa doesn't have enough of an aggro as much as OG Rorowa because of the very decent flash, but I would say it is a decent alternative. But version of Rorowa is also very token reliant because in terms of token generation, it is slightly worse.
You have one job, and one job only.
Where the original does have a better token generation, but you normally use those more for fodders for Momoke, which in all fairness is not really a problem already thanks to a brand new Momoke being in the market now, and both of them can technically use them. So the only thing that Crossing Rowa has going for that is better than the OG is just the ability to superior call and thin the deck down, which at least in my personal opinion is actually a good thing. But at the time of recording this, there is not enough card to go around that helps to fix the issue that the Crossing Rowa has, and that's why I'm leaving him behind the original for now. As let's be real, the next support that Rowa will get is most likely will gear toward this version of Rowa rather than the original. And then we have the only entry I'm willing to put into A+ tier. So Emporio, you're gonna come down a little bit to make some way for this particular deck. And I'm not gonna say his name immediately because yes, Maelstrom jumped from B tier into A+ tier. I have already talked about how good of a support Maelstrom has received in this booster, with Glory being an insanely powerful cross-ride and currently the best cross-ride unit in the current D format, and Illichrin is helping to facilitate that playstyle, meanwhile also being very decent target for Storm of Judgment, allowing you to essentially just spam the surge all the time, unlike the Blood. But what I was unaware at the time of my Glory video was that there was one more tech that you should consider when play Maelstrom, and that is the fact that Glory is technically capable of using the X skill of Maelstrom multiple times in a single turn. Sound confusing, so just for the sake of everybody, I will make as detailed of an explanation as possible, and I might make a clip part of this video into a separate video just in case you need someone to explain it for you. So here's the thing, Glory Maelstrom constant ability is to inherit the act ability of one of the Maelstrom in your soul or Rega circle. And here is the thing, when you call Maelstrom from soul out to the Rega circle, you are considering that Maelstrom to be a brand new Maelstrom. This means that you can actually use Glory Maelstrom skill to refer to that called out Maelstrom
that is now treated as a new Maelstrom.
And because of the fact that this skill of Maelstrom is not hard once per turn, you can activate it once again. So if you happen to have two different Maelstrom in your soul, you technically can activate the X skill of Maelstrom 4 times. Yeah, it is that busted. And I think this is also the reason why many of the Maelstrom deck actually managed to top the format. Like in the recent WGP finals in Singapore, 2 of Maelstrom managed to top 8. That's just how strong that stupid tech actually is. However, it doesn't mean that this deck has no weakness, because for one, it prefers to go first. I mean, it's a rush deck, but I feel you really need that rush from going first, because without that, I feel Maelstrom lose a lot of momentum because the opponent will gain more momentum before you. And then the deck also is quite reliant on Irreclinist in my opinion, as you do have to hit the surge with the skill as much as possible. But let's be real, once you get that OG Maelstrom into soul, which is not hard to do, it just easy rush all the way. And that's why Maelstrom not only just go into A+, by the way, but also is actually one of the best deck in the current format, beating Odium. That is how strong Maelstrom is right now. And you know what? Glory to the storm. Okay, enough of the Virgil mindset, as we have to go send a little bit with Stall Hihaja, as I feel unlike Cotibless who did get a great support in this booster, Stall Hihaja wasn't as lucky, because DZBT06 card that support Stall Hihaja, I feel it's kinda shit, as it just make the early number better, but the number that you are hitting against your opponent is already irritating enough, so that boost is almost unnecessary. And I feel he needs more ways to build board without being intrusive right now, so the support was unnecessary. However, the manga promo though is actually incredible, because it not only helps you to recycle back multiple order in one single instance, but he is also a really good booster in general.
Honestly, no notes.
Overall, nothing too crazy for Story Haja, so he received no change in ranking from me. Another deck that will get a crazy change in ranking from me though is definitely the Granddaughter's deck, Sthia. This booster introduces us to Meta Shirt, which is, in my opinion, an insane searcher for this deck. Considering Sthia has ability to re-triggers the on-call skill of any Sthia skill thanks to Mumilirin, so the fact that now you have a way to spam search Sthia constantly is actually quite insane. And don't forget, Meta Shirt is a 15k shield unit, which helped the deck to defend quite a lot. The only drawback I have with this deck is just that the deck hand size is still kinda shit, I'm not gonna lie. And if you are not able to get all the pieces quickly, or at least if you keep missing on your search, you also screw. And don't forget, Sthia, similar to Proto Visor, require a lot of Waga presence on the field, so if you're up against a deck that can control, it explodes. Unfortunately, I cannot shift Sthia any higher than low A-. Like, the search capability just improved the deck a lot, but I think what the deck needs now maybe is a way to draw more without over counterblasting. And then we have the last deck from stock here, and is Bab Baby. Yeah, that's the name. So Bab Baby is, let's look at okay, why am I stalling? It is just a fucking original overdress in almost every aspect of it, good or bad. Like, the problem that any overdress player has back in the earlier time of overdress is the same issue that Bab Baby has. And to make things worse, if you do not draw Takahashi, which is a way for Bab Baby to superior call back the grade 0, you are screwed. Like, genuinely, if you don't have that, you are screwed. Because one of the fun thing about this deck is that after your overdress card or explosive growth card attack, it return back to hand. So that is actually surprisingly a nice mechanic to have. But all of this doesn't matter if the deck is terrible at getting all these pieces consistently. Out of all the Coro deck we have received so far, this one needs the most expansion, because at the moment it is really bad. Even if it has a card that forces your opponent to discard a card from their hand.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, you're not mishearing it. It has that insane of a skill, but it's still a bad deck. And because of that, it is bad enough for me to put it in C tier. It's not terrible to a D tier level yet, but it is playable enough to be in C tier. Low C tier at least. And we finally come to the very last deck that I want to talk about in this tier list and for the year in itself. I just hope I can push this video out as soon as possible. But regardless, we have Clarissa. So how good is this brand new support for Clarissa? Pretty insane actually, because it finally gives you a way to recycle aim to be the strongest idol, the main order that the deck more or less need to use every single turn. And on top of that, Otifa does allow you to superior call more units during your turn 2, and even more so add greater or less Earth Connect unit back from your drop on turn 3 onwards, which is actually very nice touch. And her power boost is actually insane because she just guaranteed to increase 10k to the entire column. So if you have a brand new support for Clarissa from DZBT01, that will help drastically, and you can reach a really high number with Clarissa easily with just that 2 cards alone. The problem with Clarissa though is that it's in the era where a lot of strongest deck in the format right now are able to remove their unit from the board, preventing Clarissa on hit skill from activating multiple times. And that causes the issue where Clarissa will not be able to get as much advantage as she used to be back in the past. And on top of that, her soul is still abysmal after all this time, especially if you want to spam the Reviver, the grade 1 that I'm gonna put up on the screen now. That card is a really good card, but I feel like there is not enough soul to go with it, at least at the moment, as we did get a confirmation that the soul in effect front is gonna be releasing in DZBT7. But even with that, the fact that the deck heavily rely on his skill to get advantage is still the stinkiest part of this deck.
You were so close to perfect.
And because of that, I'm willing to shift Clarissa around just a little bit from the lower end of the B to a middle end of the B. Like, that's how much it did improve. But I think Clarissa is just unfortunately a deck that aged badly in the more modern version of the format because of how much she relied on hit skill. And with that, we have come to the end of 2024 tier list. And it's been a wow year, isn't it, for this channel? Like, we finally hit 1000 subs after like 2 years of me coming back. And it has been on a very good upward trajectory, though not the fastest, because the faster Vanguard content creator of this year is the obvious. But regardless, I am thankful that you guys are here to watch my content, whether it is this video, my other tier list, my other type of contents, including but not limited to my first impression of the new huge updates or the brand new decks. Yes, that's what most of my videos are supposed to be. My live stream and, you know, any other type of content I do outside Vanguard. So if you guys haven't checked it out, do check so when you have time, you know, as this is something I do when I have free time off my day job and everything. So if the content is slow for some of you guys, do be patient lah, cause I genuinely has been very busy and I have been trying to keep the content pushing out consistently. So yeah, that is pretty much for me from this year. Once again, thank you so much for watching the content, and don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't forget to clap that star. Don't forget to become a member for some cool perks, and that is pretty much it lah. So this is Mac Megane signing out, and hold on to your butt, because next year 2025 will be a pretty cool year. And of course, that hold on to your butt isn't just a euphemism.
Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom.